This next session is about the sustainability. This roundtable will discuss the contribution of EO for assessing progress towards sustainable development. The roundtable is moderated by our director, Betty Sharon-Popoulou, Geosystem Hellas, and the panelists are Kevin McCormack, senior statistician from the Irish Central Statistic Office and co-chair of the UN Expert Group on Sustainable Development Goals Indicator. Online we have Phoebe Kundori, chair of UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Solution Network, Global Climate Hub. Mark Dowell, leader of the European Commission Knowledge Center on Earth Observation, DGGRC, and from European and Giuseppe Ottavinelli, head of Earth Observation Application Section at ESA. So, Betty, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Betty Sharon-Popoulou, and I will moderate this session for the progress towards sustainable development. The last years, we have been hearing a lot about the Sustainable Development Agenda and the framework that provides towards help and services worldwide. Earth observation combined with other kind of data, which can be social, demographic, statistical data, can be a tool that can help to the sustainable development goals. And Earth observation can help show the strategies that can be delivered to have a kind of transparency, so all citizens and all users can have a progress toward sustainable development. This transparency has also an accountability. When we say sustainable goals, we have on one hand what we see in the level of United Nations and with the SDGs, and on the other hand, what we see in Europe with the Green Deal, the zero emissions that we hear, and also the new Bauhaus. All those initiatives are here, and Earth observation can be a tool that can drive us ahead in order to have better decisions, to have better policies, and to go to a sustainable future. Here in the panel, we have some experts in the field, and I start from Kevin. We have Phoebe online. Not sure that, yes.
Yes,
we have
here.
Mark, and we have Giuseppe. So please, by starting with Kevin, just give us some inputs about the organization that you are represented and your position on the SDGs and other European initiatives.
Okay, thank you, Betty. So I have two hats. I have a national hat because I'm the head of the SDG unit in Ireland, the Statistics Office in Ireland. I'm a member of the Interagency Expert Group on SDGs at the UN level, and I also chair then the working group on geospatial information as part of that IAG SDG. So part of my job is to both understand what the SDGs are. Believe it or not, we've got 232 statistical indicators which have 169 targets and go all the way back up to 17 goals. So it's the Statistics Office responsibility to understand the challenges in getting the data, and then how you have to then look at the issues that Betty has just raised, that there's a UN SDGs and there's an EU set of SDGs. So what you have to do is communicate this then to the public on what you're dealing with, how you deal with it, and how you present it to them. So as I said, it's a crowded field, but that's our job in statistics to do it. And one of my goals is to link the geospatial and statistical communities together, and I work hard at that at the UN level.
Thank you, Kevin. So Phoebe? Phoebe is online, so...
Yes. Let me briefly say that I'm a professor at the Athens University of Economics and Business and a research professor at the Technical University of Denmark. I'm a mathematical economist, and I also lead the Global Climate Hub of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. I also lead a number of other research institutions that do a lot of work on the sustainability transition. And I would like to this brief introduction to summarize that we are at a state of multiple crises, the climate crisis, biodiversity collapse, inflationary pressures and recessions, together with the pandemic that is officially over, but we know that there are going to be recurring pandemics. And this multi-crisis scenario is supposed to be handled within the SDGs, the UN Agenda 2030 that 193 states have signed. 17 goals, 169 targets. We measure them every year in terms of country performance within this with regards to these targets using 250 indicators, and we also transpose them into European Green Deal directives, laws, and strategies. And I would like to say that it is definitely a very hectic agenda and a very hectic transposition from one country to another, one nation to another, but it's something that it can save us, this green and digital transition that takes into account socioeconomic interaction with nature is our only manual to escape this multi-crisis, and it is crucial to sort out how to implement it. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. Mark, from the European side.
Thanks, Betty. Good afternoon, everyone. Mark Dowell from the European Commission's Joint Research Centre. And if you're wondering if these chairs up here are comfy, yes, they are very much. So I'll try not to fall off after the lunch. So I'm responsible at the Joint Research Centre for the projects that are providing scientific and technical support to the Copernicus programme. But I think for this session, more importantly, I'm also leading this European Commission Knowledge Centre on Earth observation. I'm assuming some of you will have heard of this. We started it a few years ago, and our ambition is really to provide a mechanism inside the Commission to dialogue with all of the other policy DGs. We now have 15 DGs on our steering group to really make sure that they are where we understand their needs and requirements for Earth observation data, and that we're working with them to make sure that they can implement Earth observation and in particular Copernicus products and services most effectively in the work that they're doing. The Knowledge Centre also has kind of a second pillar of work, which we do as well together with our colleagues in DG RTD. I should mention the Knowledge Centre as a whole is co-chaired by DG DEFIS and the JRC. But this research and innovation pillar, we're working also, of course, very closely with the colleagues in DG RTD. And there, our idea is firstly to establish a longer-term strategy for research and innovation in Earth observation in Europe, so that goes beyond the traditional work program cycle. And secondly, to try and mainstream increasingly Earth observation in different parts of the framework program, so in different parts of Horizon Europe, so that we're really not only seeing it appear in Cluster 4, which deals with the space issues, in Cluster 6, which deals with the issues on environmental observations, but really mainstream Earth observation throughout the research program. So those are some of the activities of the Knowledge Center. I should mention also I'm involved, also together with Betty, in a number of international programs, in particular the Group on Earth Observations and the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites. And specifically on these SDG issues, we also try, as the Commission, in different of these groups, and make sure that kind of the European capacity and the European potential to deliver SDGs also at that international level through those programs is really valorized and taken advantage of. And with Betty, we've been working over the last year on defining a strategy for GEO in the post-2025 area. So I'll stop there, Betty. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And Giuseppe, just the last one in the group.
Good afternoon again, everybody. So indeed, from the ESA perspective, myself, I lead a team that looks at developing an R&D element within the Earth Observation Directorate that tackles projects from early prototypes to pre-operational demonstrators in terms of maturity and scalability of the applications to enable European and international policies. So from the international perspective, of course, we tackle UNFCCC, the CCD, the CBD on biodiversity, and the Ramsar conventional wetlands. And so we try to develop new information products, new knowledge, of course, with hand in hand with industry, to enable such policies. And in the process, we always engage the stakeholders in a broader perspective. So also the policymakers, also our colleagues at the Commission that often sits in our advisory boards of the projects, and the end users. So specifically with the SDGs, we clearly have a dialogue with the custodian agencies and as well with the national statistical offices that are involved in the development of the project, as I mentioned before in my early presentation as well, in a co-design and phase and full validation of the suitability of the end results. The various entities may be early adopters of the solutions, and progressively we push the capacity development and capacity of, let's say, also deployment, so that they become full champion users and help us in testing the operational applicability of these solutions. What I want to say is that this activity, this element, is just one part of the chain of knowledge between early science projects, looking at earth science systems, climate-related research, and also downstream more into the mainstreaming of Earth observation. For example, we have a program on global development assistance that really looks at the full embedding of Earth observation integrated solutions for development as well at a global scale, working with other partners such as the World Bank and other IFIs. So this is a bit the broad scope of what we do in the framework of the Earth observation program.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Back to our statistical guy in the team. So, Kevin, as a statistical expert, how can Earth observation data be integrated with other sources of data and provide a more comprehensive picture towards sustainable development? And how the Earth observation industry can engage more effectively with custodian agencies and develop Earth observation guidelines for the SDGs, means that is there a kind of standardization on that? So the floor is yours, and we would like to hear from you what are also the main obstacles that still hinder the integration of the Earth observation solutions in the monitoring and in the reporting of the SDGs, because it's a question that shall be answered.
Okay, thank you, Betty. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, so myself and my colleague, the dinosaur from the statistics office, will answer. So, so Earth observations. So you guys live in the sky, we live on the Earth. Okay, so there's two geographies. So this is the key piece, is that so statistical offices have geospatially enabled surveys, census, and so forth. So we're able to layer geospatial information with data. You've got social data, you have unemployment, employment data, tens of thousands of pieces of data coming through it. Now, if Earth observations data is to be used, say, in the social aspect of things, if those geographies can align. Now, of course, we're statisticians.
It's on. It's green.
Okay, is that better? Sorry. Okay, so now it's on. So, so I work, as I said, at the UN level. I'm co-chair of the working group on geospatial information, and we like frameworks because we're statisticians as well as in that particular space. So from a statistical point of view, we have a statistical business process model developed by our colleagues in the UNECE in Geneva, and then our colleagues in New York, the UNGGIM, they have another framework, which is the Global Statistical Geospatial Framework. Those two frameworks should work together, and that would allow us to have interoperability between statistical and geospatial spaces in order to improve your data and your metadata, so you can get better data at different geographies. So for example, if you can layer in Earth observations on, say, we have done this in Ireland, for example, we looked at the light at night time. So we're able to get some satellite imagery of the nights. Well, I think there's only 40 days in Ireland that there's no clouds over Ireland, so clouds are always a problem. We had that earlier today. So we still were able to do it, okay, believe it or not. So we looked at the geographies, okay, and we were able to take the, I think it's a kilometre square information that was coming from the Earth's observation data, and we just saw it as a big data challenge, and we loaded it into our own data sets for our own national geographies. From that, it allowed us to be able to map correctly what was actually going on, and we were able to then bring that through and have an official publication with a CSO stamp on it. So now you're into official statistics. When you're into official statistics, what you then have is government. Government listen to official statistics. They will come to the statistical offices first and say, is this real or not? So there's the challenge. But how can you overcome the challenge? First of all, you have to note the challenges. So you got skills and resources, if you're actually looking at the two communities coming together. I see the Earth observations challenge as a programming challenge. I've been programming all my life, so it's just another solution I have to apply to it. But not everybody, just myself and my dinosaur friend over there are talking this. So the key piece is communication. You've got to communicate there is a solution. Then when you have the solution, what can it solve? You know, people are open to it, just they don't understand it. You have a whole new vocabulary that they don't understand, and I think statistics have a vocabulary that you might not understand. So how do we do it? We have a roadmap that we've built from the ISDG, WGGI, where we're actually looking at taking worked examples. We have 3 that we're working at the moment. One is the Mountain Green Index, it's in goal 15. The other one is ocean fortification, which is in goal 14. And then we have rural population 2 miles from an all-seasons road, and that's in SDG 9. So we're looking at this and to provide worked examples. And we're going to be pushing that out to the statistical community, not to the EO community, to the statistical community, showing that you can actually produce information for it. And for your information, there are several of the SDGs that can only provide information through Earth observations. There are several of them, and they can only provide information through Earth observations. Then I might touch just slightly before I finish on our colleagues from the FAO. They do great work, and then they supply the national statistical offices with their outputs, for example, on a Mountain Green Index. The statistical offices don't understand what they've been given. They don't have the skills or resources to do the analysis on it. So it's a big communication part that, certainly from my perspective, that I see that has to work. And then using the worked examples, it means you can lead people with you. You can't just say this is better than not, because I tell you Earth observations is not better, but it is good. And therefore, if you have a hybrid approach, using the in-situ surveys, which was said today already, at least twice, and your Earth observations working closely together, I think that's the way we get to the solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And we go to Phoebe. Phoebe, what's, in your opinion, the key challenges and limitations in using Earth observation for assessing progress towards the sustainable development? And do you think that the Earth observation data can be improved to better support the decision-making towards achieving sustainable development goals? So, what's
Of
your
course,
position on that?
Of course, I think that. Can you see my slide? Just because I'm away, I don't know if you can see my slides. If you cannot, just let me know. It's okay.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so the main thing that I want to convey today is that achieving the SDGs, it's about understanding them, it's about measuring them, and about managing the resources towards increasing and improving the implementation of the SDGs. And we work very much on that as United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. I lead the Global Climate Hub, like I said before, but also lead the European headquarters. The UNSDSN is a global network of more than 1,800 institutional members. And it also includes the European Association of Environmental Resource Economies that I am the president of. And I say that because I'm going to argue that in these SDGs, we really need to integrate the geospatial and socioeconomic data in order to measure, manage, and improve them. And as I said in my introductory remarks, we are in this multi-crisis status, and our way out is the implementation of the SDGs. And every year in the Sustainable Development Report of UNSDSN, we measure the progress of each and every country, as you see in this map, with regards to the SDGs. Darker blue, a higher achievement of the SDGs, more than 80%, lighter becomes lower achievement. And we measure this with regards to 169 targets and 250 KPIs. We do that for Europe, and we can not only identify the status of a country. Red is serious challenges, orange is significant challenges towards the implementation of the SDGs, yellow is challenges remaining, and when you have green, you have the full achievement of the SDGs. And we can measure using both socioeconomic and geospatial data the status of each and every SDG in the world, in each continent, in each country, within countries, that is regions within countries, cities within countries. We have transposed this framework into company measurement of SDG performance. In this way, we have a very elaborated framework to measure performance and has identified the gap from where we are to where we want to go, and within this gap devise pathways, technological policy and financial pathways that will allow us to close the gap. I lead this Alliance of Excellence for Research and Innovation on IFORIA, 5 research centers and 5 innovation accelerators. Innovation acceleration and digital innovation acceleration is crucial in these pathways. And of course, we collaborate with global and European networks with 200 researchers and more than 100 multi-million competitively funded projects. And we work on in all these areas: climate change mitigation, adaptation, sustainable seas and waters, water, food, energy nexus, innovation, acceleration, and ESG and SDG measurement. And in this global climate hub that I'm leading, we are working with nations across the world in order to co-design with local stakeholders, including politicians, policymakers, businesses, financial institutions, the civil society, together with scientists and technology developers, the optimal dynamic mixture of technological pathways, policy pathways, financial and socioeconomic pathways to move from where we are today to implementing this very complex policy framework. So we have the SDGs, And we know that no SDG is fully implemented without the SDGs being implemented, and we know the measurement of implementation integrates both socioeconomic and geospatial data, and we also have crafted 6 transformations that can gather the different layers of SDGs into implementation in order to accelerate progress with regards to the implementation of the agenda. And we need to transform education, health, decarbonization, sustainable use of natural resources, sustainable cities and communities, and of course accelerate the digital evolution to sustainable development. And we know that the transposition of these SDGs and the Paris Agreement, which mainly refers to SDG 13, is the European Green Deal with climate neutrality, reduction of pollution, clean tech leadership of European companies, and social cohesion, leave no one behind. And we've also done some machine learning studies in order to answer questions like, does the European Green Deal support the SDGs? And yes, going through all the policies, the 9 European Green Deal policies, the industrial policy, the digital policy, the Fit for 55 policy, the climate law, the policies that have to do with the EU taxonomy and the Corporate Sustainability Directive, we find that the European Green Deal really supports the SDG, mostly those on climate action, industry, innovation, and infrastructure that includes digitalization, affordable clean energy, responsible consumption and production, and decent work and economic growth. However, what is important for us to know is that the European Green Deal is instrumental in supporting transformation on sustainable use of natural resources, and transformation 3 on energy decarbonization is less strong on the digital revolution for sustainable development. These are results from machine learning exercises, and it's particularly weak on the social cohesion transformations. And we all know that no big transformation has ever been achieved without vivid social cohesion. We also know that after COVID, the Next Generation EU supports the green and digital transition, and has explicitly said what is green and what is digital. Green is decarbonization, circular economy, restoration of biodiversity, mobility, and digital is improving connectivity, helping citizens deploy digital skills, deploy cutting-edge technologies, and improving cybersecurity. And all of this has been financed by the RRFs, the Recovery and Resilience Plans, but we again see that most of the money have been directed to SDG-related concepts and projects, implementable projects, but not the projects, not the SDGs that had the lower performance. Those were not the SDGs that received most of the money. Let me close by saying that the climate law, the EU taxonomy, Fit for 55, is integrated with all the digital policies, the policies that have to do with digital services and markets and European chips and European digital identity and policies with artificial intelligence, together with the this big initiative on Destination Earth that is creating the digital twin for the interaction between humans and Earth, and at the same time incorporating industrial policies that is explicitly supporting the twin transition by having in mind the EU strategic dependencies on raw materials, batteries, hydrogen, and so on other countries, having China as the most dependent one. And within this policy framework, we try to accelerate climate action. This is how climate action transposes at the moment, and in 2030, in our projections, this is the right-hand side of the of the slides, and this is life on land, life below water, and affordable clean energy as the 4 SDGs that are extremely explicit with regards to our achievements for climate neutrality and climate resilience. And I close by showcasing the structure of the UN SDGs Global Climate Hub. We work on climate data platforms and digital application. We have an atmospheric physics and climatology unit, climate and energy modeling, land use modeling, climate and health, innovation acceleration, then the analysis of the just transition and how we can support the transition with social cohesion using fiscal innovation and also using public-private partnerships and accelerating positive growth multipliers and positive job multipliers, and the last 2 units on inclusive co-design living labs with local stakeholders so that they co-own the solution pathways, and education, of course, is crucial. And with regards to the Climate Hub, and this is the last part that I'm gonna say, this climate data platforms and digital applications unit is very important because it aggregates, connects, visualizes the relevant data for the objectives of the Climate Hub. We have partnerships with OpenAir, with the Association of Community Machinery, with Trends Initiative in UNSDSN, and with Earth Observation Offices. The societal benefit priorities of GEO office is very related to the data that we need in order to feed our climate models, the climate and energy and climate and land use and climate and health, using biodiversity, disaster data, energy data, food security data, health surveillance, and so on. And we started by creating a solid basis with a depository for data on SDGs. You can see hundreds of thousands, even millions of thousands of raw data, models, results of models, policy papers, and so on from the scientific community per SDG. And finally, we are creating an AI-driven data infrastructure that combines all the data we need, socioeconomic and geospatial, and has an AI data infrastructure to mine the data, and then it creates a community to create the indicators and validate the indicators. And this is the firm basis of everything that the Climate Hub is doing. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Phoebe. It's quite impressive. But coming down to the European level, going to Mark, the European Commission remains committed to the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. How are Copernicus and GRC helping to coordinate those 2 agendas? And since we do not have so much time, I'm going to give you another question also. We now have the European Commission Knowledge Center on Earth Observation, which is your house, your home, which aims to incentivize the uptake of Earth observation in EU policy. What specific additional opportunities do you see with the European Green Deal? And what are the remaining issues, obstacles, and how do you see the European private sector contributing to those?
Thanks, Betty. I'll try and be as succinct as I can in the response. So first of all, thinking about the SDG support. First of all, I think it's fair to say that Copernicus as a program is fairly ideal as far as supporting the needs for the SDGs, in the sense that, of course, there's a fairly big commitment to long-term sustainability in delivering products and services in an operational context. And I sometimes think we take that for granted, but perhaps we shouldn't. Things can always change, and I think this commitment to long-term sustainability and continuity is something that we should, whenever possible, reiterate the need for, both because, yes, it provides an underpinning stability for supporting policy and decision-making, but at the same time, it provides a stability to all of you to develop downstream products and services on a strong foundation that you know you can rely on. So at the global scale, in the context of the SDGs, we have been quite successful, I think, with Copernicus. And Giuseppe mentioned this before as well. We worked quite effectively through the so-called custodian agencies, the UN custodian agencies. So just to give you some examples, we're supporting UNCCD on 15.3.1, so that's on land degradation, including Earth observation products coming either from the Copernicus program or for the European Space Agency, supporting land productivity dynamics, land cover, and other products that go into that SDG indicator. We've supported, through the Global Human Settlement Layer, the SDG 11, 0.3.1, I think, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of a growing collaboration with UN Habitat. And then with UNEP, and I think this is perhaps one of the most successful cases, we're really strongly supporting both on the water quantity, surface water quantity, and on the water quality aspects, the indicators under SDG 6. So in all cases, that relationship's been built up with the custodian agency. Actually, the water case, I'll just give a very interesting anecdote that shows the continuity from research to operations, and this is something for you, Giuseppe. If I'm not mistaken, the products that now are currently used were originally developed in the context of an ESA research program, which was called Diversity 2, and I think actually some of the ERSC members were a part of that contract. After that, the Global Land Service in Copernicus took on board to systematically map in an operational context water quality products, and that consortia that had built itself up in the ESA project responded to that, and now, of course, we're delivering products from that operational system directly into the UN SDG indicator framework. So it shows this elegant transition from, at the European level, in investments we make in research, then going into an operational context. At the European level, I think we understand, of course, that in the context of the Eurostat framework, which Kevin referred to as well, there are some success stories in the use of Copernicus data. It's perhaps not as much as we'd like, so you have things like ocean acidification, the imperviousness products that are in the operational system and that are used in the Eurostat framework. I think it's what's more interesting, what many people maybe don't appreciate, and although I'm sure Kevin probably does, is that the so-called on-hold indicators, which currently don't have a strong basis for observations or monitoring systems to support them. But in fact, when you look at those on-hold variables, there are a couple that I think Earth observation could definitely contribute to, things like forest connectivity and I think drought-related ecosystem challenges and things like this. So there are several, if you look at that on-hold list, and those are probably missed opportunities that we should be looking into a bit more. I think Phoebe provided a nice mapping showing how the SDGs relate to the European Green Deal, and we've heard throughout the morning of a number of policy applications for this. In the Knowledge Center, as many of you are aware, we've just finished doing a deep dive assessment on biodiversity, and I think we learned a lot of lessons from that process. First of all, I was very happy the engagement from the Commission services. We had 6 of the policy DGs actively involved, and we learned, I think, a couple of things. First of all, that increasingly policy coherence is going to become a key aspect where Earth observation can support. So the different DGs have different interests, but in many cases now, if you look at the Green Deal policies, there are actually interdependencies between different policy applications in one area and in another, whether you think about agriculture and biodiversity, energy, or climate policy and agriculture. So there are a lot of these interdependencies. And I think we need, as a community, to start thinking more and more how we use Earth observation products to support policy coherence. A second thing that came up time and time again this morning is this idea, how do we use Earth observation in a more legal setting? Because let's face it, if we look back 3 or 4 years, there were maybe 2 references to Copernicus in EU legislation, or 3 maybe, LULUCF, the CAP, and maybe 1 or 2 others. Now, just in the last 18 months, I think there are 9 references to Copernicus in different EU legislation. So we're seeing that, but increasingly, it's getting to the point where it's really going to have legal implications on how Earth observation data and services are used in monitoring, in formal monitoring and verification, and reporting and verification process. So I thought the discussions this morning were excellent because it's clear that you also appreciate this need to get to a more legal binding use of Earth observation. I think another obstacle, well, first of all, an opportunity, and I think we're seeing this a lot as we're discussing more and more with the policy DGs. There are some key thematic areas that, again, dealing with policy coherence things are bringing things together. One is the urban setting. So I think really from a policy context, we're going to see more and more thought about how we use Earth observation, looking at urban issues, both in the Green Deal context, but also in other contexts. And so increased products and services to address that urban setting. Just in the biodiversity deep dive, for example, we had a need to start thinking about how do we systematically map urban green areas, even on rooftops and things like this. And of course, this is a fairly challenging application and definitely at the moment isn't something that's covered by the operational services. And then I think an obstacle is still the last mile. So how we bridge both institutionally, but also as a broader Earth observation community, the research community and the private sector in Europe, how do we bridge that last mile to decision making? In a policy context, as far as the need for public data to support it, we need to find a way to take the output from the core services and for the rest of the program and provide tailored products and services addressing all of these policy needs. I mean, if you think of this deep dive we just finished on biodiversity, we're starting a new one on climate adaptation with an urban focus. Each of these is going to have use cases, and within a couple of years, we're going to have a whole collection of these, but it's not clear how the scalability of following through on these last mile policy applications for all of these cases. So I think as a broader community, and I'm sure that ERSC can make invaluable contributions on that, we need to think about how we bridge that gap. And I think, Betty, I'll stop there for now.
Okay, well done. I have bargained for one last question to Giuseppe because we are out of time. I will skip the first question that was fully explained during your presentation about the latest developments and also IC tools, etc., etc. But I go to the second question. How is ASSIS, the European Earth observation strength, in the years to come in support to the SDGs and the European initiatives such as the Green Deal and the new European Bauhaus?
So I'll be brief. I think it's all about empowerment. So there is a major opportunity for, well, the institutional perspective. It's about providing a certain, stable long-term conditions, but for the commercial aspects to empower the end users. And these are primarily the national statistical offices that have to report about the SDGs. So providing reliable data and information, reliable in terms of time, in terms of quality, and also about the fit-for-purposeness of what the national statistical offices have to report. So in terms of disaggregation as well of the data, if things can be done at the right scale that they need. Another aspect and key opportunity that I think will come forward is the fact that EO can help in crosswalk between different statistical frameworks that are being developed in the global context, in terms of definition of certain ecosystems or definition of specific SDGs targets and indicators. So helping in the better definition, harmonization of the statistical terms across different domains. Again, it's something that Earth observation can bring forward, and again, a golden opportunity for the full value-adding industry here.
Thank you all for this great roundtable. As far as we all understand, we had less than 1 hour. We had also to bargain for some more minutes. It's an open discussion that can continue for hours and days, but I think it's well done here in a short time. And thanks all the panelists for helping this roundtable. Thank you.